Shalom to the brothers and you sisters out there that are of the hopeful elect. This is your brother Samak coming to you with another lesson, giving all praise, honor, and glory to How about you, Yahushai, and double honors to the elders and apostles of the millstone. Peace and blessing to the elect. So coming with an impromptu, I'm actually headed back to base right now. I'm just finishing work. But I wanted to share a few words, something that's just been resonating on my spirit. I was just meditating, talking to the Lord, just amongst, videos and different things I watch. We have to, and I'm speaking to myself first and foremost, that's what I'm saying. We need to really, turn the heat up. Now is the time to really turn up the heat in our walk in this truth. To what? To get in the good graces of Yahweh Yahushua. Now, ultimately, we know that we are in good case. Why? Because the Most High is continually keeping us in His faith. We're consistently waking up every morning, calling on His name, thinking on His word, doing our lessons. And it can get to the point where sometimes this work feels like an obligation or a chore, if you will, or it may feel like it's just redundant, it's repetitive, and it is. Sometimes it is. Anything in life, at least for the most part, is repetitive, right? And it's called structure. It's called having a routine. Usually the boring things in life are the things that yield the best results. Whether it's your diet, your routine. And usually when I say boring, I really just mean repetitive or redundant, because sometimes if you do something over and over and over and over again, it can become boring. You lose that sense of enjoyment or fulfillment, if you will. That just the dopamine, if you will. But the results and the benefits are forever, right? Like eating clean, eating high protein and healthy fats, getting your fiber, whatever, getting your minerals, your nutrients. Those things, and exercising, right? Strength training, doing your cardio, keeping your heart healthy, keeping your blood vessels dilated, right? Keeping that blood flowing. Those things can get repetitive if you have a routine that you consistently stick to and you don't deviate from it. Especially if you're not like chasing, PRs and stuff like that. You're just kind of like running 3 miles a day. Maybe you may do 4 here. You're just doing your pull-ups and push-ups and some squats and lunges and stuff just to keep yourself in shape. You're not out here bodybuilding or anything like that. It can get repetitive and get redundant. But guess what? Those benefits yield a lifetime. They're going to carry you over into literally to the end of your life. Just speaking plainly, you can get to, you can live to 100, 105 years old, and you still sharp in the mind. You're in shape. You still got some muscle definition. You're still able to walk up and down the steps. You're still able to sit in a squat. You're still able to do push-ups and pull-ups and many other things, right? Why? Because you've consistently kept yourself in shape. You had good care of your diet. You maintain your muscle mass by eating high protein and keeping your hormone health and keeping your gut health good. And fasting. Practice fasting, right? Why? Because that is a part of our heritage. Fasting is a big part of our heritage, a big part of our culture. Not even just Israelite culture, other cultures in the world practice fasting. Fasting is probably the most beneficial practice that you can do for your health. Even if you don't eat the best, if you practice regular fasting, not only intermittent fasting, like 18 hours fasted, 6-hour eating window on a regular, but you just sprinkle in a 24, 36 hours fast once a week. And then like every month or two, you do a full reset, 72 hours, no food. You're going to be pretty healthy. You're going to be pretty healthy. Look at Asians, Moab, Ammon. Them motherfuckers, they smoke a lot. They eat a lot of rice. But guess what? What they do also is they mimic the body's natural movements and stuff. Like they sit in deep squats, so they always keep their ankle mobility and the hip mobility and the hip strength and stuff like that. They practice that from their babies up to their old ages. They drink a lot of hot liquids, hot water, hot tea with every meal. They walk after every meal. They might smoke the cigarettes, but they may fast occasionally. And they just have simple diets, and they eat a lot of fermented foods, which increases that gut microbiome, which gives you your gut health. You know, which puts that good bacteria into your gut, and then they feed it with the probiotics or the prebiotics, which feed the gut bacteria, which then creates a very healthy environment for digestion and hormone regulation, hormone production, which keeps you healthy. So that's just one part of this lesson, not just all about health, but that's one part. Now we move on to the next segment. What's the next segment? Well, the next part of just, turning the heat up and getting yourself right is being more disciplined with your responsibilities as a man and as a woman. And now is the time to really hunker down on your vices, your weaknesses. You're always going to have weaknesses, but there's two sides to every coin. You're also going to have strengths. So there's weaknesses and there's strengths. Now, some people will tell you to highlight your weaknesses and strengthen them, but guess what? A weakness is always going to be a weakness. As humans, we just lack in certain areas of our lives, and we have an abundance in other areas of our lives. So my opinion and what I think has worked for me in the short period of time that I implemented, I have to work on consistency. That's one area of my life that I need to work on. Certain things you have to work on: discipline, consistency, focus. But you should play to your strengths. So, for example, I'm going to put a percentage behind it. I would say, majority of the time, I would say about 70% of the time, I think 70 is a good number. 70% of the time, you should play to your strengths. Meaning, build on your strengths. If your strengths with doing lessons, for example, is going into history, 70% of your videos should be based on history. Why? Because people will know you and they'll come to your page to learn about the history and breaking down different things. 30% of the time should be built on areas that you're not as proficient in. Maybe prophecy, future prophecy, maybe going into the Hebrew, maybe going into the law, whatever. 70% of the time, play to your strengths. And this is just also greater than just the word itself, like the lessons and the knowledge, but just anything in your life. This could be work. This could be personal. We all have our own personal goals and endeavors that we want to achieve. Why? We're essentially chasing perfection. Our perfection does not come through the fulfillment of the law, but our perfection comes through the belief and faith and our works towards Yahweh Shai. That's what makes us perfect. Because when you go into the scriptures and you go into the Hebrew, perfection or perfect goes into upright. It goes into righteous. All of the men in the scriptures that walked the earth, they went off. There's only a few that didn't see death. Yahweh Shai, when he was on the scene, he didn't see death, he got translated. Enoch, he didn't see death, he got translated. Alright, but when you look at of our other ancestors, whether the scriptures highlighted it or not, I think it's safe to assume that at periods of their life they went off. For example, like Abraham, I can't remember a scripture where it highlighted Abraham's fault, like he did something wrong. But guess what? Abraham still saw death, but he was counted as a friend of the Most High. Like, now again, is it safe to assume that at some point in his life he went off at some points? I think it's safe to assume. But again, I'm not adding to the word. Again, it's an assumption. But when the great men of the scriptures that we do know went off, David was beloved. David is beloved of the Most High. David has his own house within the Most High's within the Most High's house of David, which is going to be magnified again in the kingdom, right? So, but David committed a grave sin unto the Lord. Yet the Lord blessed him. Why? Not because of his works per se, but David was a faithful man. David consistently supped with the Lord. He was consistently talking to the Lord and pleading with the Lord and giving the Lord his due glory. And if the Lord gave him an order, he fulfilled it with joy and honor, right? Solomon is another example. Solomon committed idolatry, which is one of the greatest sins. You know, he was allowing his wives and concubines to, do all type of idolatry and just wickedness. He gave his heart to women. And guess what? The Most High took his kingdom, but he still was blessed. But his attitude, his actions toward the Lord prior was great. And even in, just remorse. There's many men in the scriptures, many examples. So the point is, play to your strengths. Don't highlight your weaknesses too much. Give your weaknesses time to work on those things, but your weaknesses, strengthening your weaknesses is not going to make you a better player, if you will. If you're an athlete, you want to max out your strengths, because your strengths are what's going to carry you. It's going to carry your weaknesses. For example, let's say you are a basketball player, and let's say you are average height in the NBA, 6'4", is an average height. You're a guard. Well, let's go a little taller, 6'6". You're 6'6". No, say I like 6'4". You're 6'4", you're a guard. You're tall, but in an NBA standards, you're average, whatever. Maybe a little below average. But guess what? Let's say your strengths are explosiveness, freak athleticism. So, think of like Derrick Rose, prime Derrick Rose, Russell Westbrook, those, 6'4" type of guards, 6'3", 6'4" guards with super explosive, crazy athleticism, crazy bounce. John Morant's another modern one today. So you think about them, right? But let's just say their jump shot was mediocre. 60 overall. As a guard, you need to be able to do a few things to be successful in the league. You need to be able to pass. You need to be able to dribble. And generally, you need to be able to shoot. But if your shooting lacks, but you're super strong in your athleticism, meaning Derrick Rose, again, Russell Westbrook, these dudes, they can get to the rim. And they're so athletic, and that they can, at 6'4", they're jumping over 7-footers. So they don't necessarily have to be the best shooters, or even be good shooters at that. They can be decent shooters. And because they're so athletic, they can get to the hole, and they can get to the bucket, get in the paint, and score a bucket. So they play to their strengths, and they'll work on their jump shot behind the scenes. But then somebody like Stephen Curry, he's not that athletic, but he has a pretty but he has an amazing jump shot. If not arguably one of the best shooters of all time. But guess what? he doesn't have to focus on his athleticism. No, he focuses on his strength, his passing and his shooting. So you get the point. Play to your strengths. Focus and highlight your strengths and really work on those. And then you give your weaknesses and the things that you kind of lack, you give those things time. 30%, give them 30% of your time. A little hit time here, a little time there, and you build this slowly over time, but you highlight your strengths because that's what you're going to be known for. All right. I think that's pretty much the point I wanted to talk about. Just really those two things. In turning the heat up, really hunkering down on our health, because your health is going to help your state of mind. It's going to give you the energy and the focus you need to progress in this truth, and then actually focusing on yourself in the truth, which is your strength and your weaknesses. So Lord willing, this video was edifying. Until next time, shalom.